All right, everyone, welcome to the Policy and Projects Committee meeting for Athens in Motion. I'd like to thank Carol for putting together our agenda, which was pretty late getting out there because of me. Life is busy. Our agenda items, any agenda additions and approval. We'll spend most of today talking about the Complete Streets policy rewrite, where we left off in next steps. Then if there's any other business, we'll discuss, and a next meeting date if we can have one. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. Add to the agenda.
I think that'll keep us busy.
Yeah. Okay, so it's approved the way it is. I don't think we need to vote on that. So Complete Streets policy rewrite. Carol kicked us off. Teresa has been in there reviewing and commenting a lot. Hillary has also been in there. Carol, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, I'll kick us off, and I do have the document out. That was a week ago or so. I put that up there, and I took basically, if I can remember this process, because I spent a lot of hours on it. I took what we had, and I integrated that with parts from 3 plans, which, in retrospect, I should have probably color coded to begin with, but I didn't. And to sort of using, and I'm using this as my thing, the Smart Growth Complete Streets Policy Review. This is our one from July of 2018, where we received 21 out of 100 points available. And so I was keeping that in mind, and the criteria that are online, and there's descriptions of it from the Complete Streets Coalition. Instead of pulling from the other documents and putting it together, there were places in it where I forced some things that it was very much meant as a draft. And I have since gone back in there based on a lot of Hillary's comments and responded to. There are clearly things that, in terms of process organization, different silos of government control and stuff, where I might have had some stuff in there that didn't fit with what we have here. I think I addressed some of those things in here. I would say that one of the things that our old policy didn't have at all, and in terms of what we had come up with before, we didn't have the parts where it got into the, I'm trying to pull this up here right now, the performance, well, not just the implementation steps and performance measures. There are places where we got 0 last time: implementation step, project selection criteria, performance measures. And so those are ones where and land use, and I think we might have had something on that already added in. I can't remember from the work that we had previously done individually. So I had to find things to add in there to go with what what you're supposed to have this great complete streets policy. Hillary, I probably freaked Hillary out a little bit, but actually, when I went in yesterday morning and I looked at all of Hillary's comments, they were very. Actually, I thought there was a lot in there that there was tweaking needed in place, discussion of places where perhaps we don't need something or need to add something. So I haven't gone back in since Teresa made comments. I think she made some comments again, and I don't know how recently you, Lauren, Elliot, or Aaron have gone in there and read through the comments. And I'd like to I don't know. I actually felt good after I actually went through and read each one of those comments and made some kind of response. There were things I still had questions about. So I feel like we're moving in the right direction. But I guess I want to make clear that I never thought that this was the draft that I came up with was a done deal by any means. It was something for us to work with and shape further. So that's how I'll start it off. Teresa, do you have any? I just want to see what I know Teresa looked at it and see what her kind of reaction is right now, or if what you commented on in a way, where you are with it, and then see if Elliot and Aaron, Lauren and Hillary have some more comments, and we can go into, I have the document open and we can go look at the document and some of the things that need discussion. Teresa?
Yeah, so I think that it's definitely headed in the right direction. Yes, it needs a fair amount of editing and fine tuning. And yes, there are some organizational and management questions that need to be dealt with. But I like the basic philosophy. My main comments are that there are a number of items that are not worded very well, and they are not easy to understand. And I took a stab at interpreting them, and I put them in comments on the side. The other thing I'm going to say is that the whole equity section, I feel like that's just too wordy. I don't think we need to be twisting ourselves up into pretzels, to try and explain it. I mean, I think it's pretty clear. We want to make sure that we're putting resources where they're needed most, and where they're needed most are in communities that have traditionally and historically been neglected, underserved, underfunded, etc.
Yeah.
Good job.
I will say that on the parts that we had done, for the most part, like what Aaron and Lauren and Elliot had done, I think mostly what I did was just like add numbers and indentation. If there were places where it really seemed to me that there was repetition, might have taken something out. But I don't, I think some of it was just making it all in that kind of numbered way. But yeah, so the equity part is longer. We can look at that more and discuss it and see what our points, our views on that. How about Aaron, Lauren, Elliot?
Yeah, I mean, with equity, I think I know it is long, but I don't want it to be an afterthought in this. I really think it's so important, because that's it's a critical aspect of this. Is I don't know. I can't find the words right now what I'm trying to say, but it's this is the core of problems with transportation. As it comes down to issues of equity, and it increases marginalization of communities, just like in the presentation that some of us watched a few weeks ago. It's just at the core of this. So I think it's important that we do thoughtfully address this, and in some detail. But I know we could probably make it a little more concise.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm only need to make that this section is any more full than any of the other sections, or needs any more editing than any of the other sections. I appreciate the extent to which y'all have looked over and reviewed this and left comments. I hope what I said about, I left a comment here. I'm looking at it. Where did it go? Okay, yeah. I hope what I said about, Teresa, you had said on number 5, you had a question about funds specifically designated to neighborhoods and streets should not be a cause to remove those areas from general T-SPLOST or SPLOST bucket funds. And Hillary, I know you were concerned about talking about specific funds, but I hope my response made sense to that.
Yes, it did. It was helpful. And then up on the side, I tried to reinterpret the statement. I don't know if I did a good job or not, but it's in the comments sidebar, somewhere in that thread.
Okay.
Do we want to go after we hear everyone talk?
Sure.
Do we want to just go into the document and work with it a little bit?
Yeah, sounds good.
Elliot? Talk. Mute, unmute. Elliot.
He's unmuted, but we can't hear him, unfortunately.
Yeah. What did that say? I'm united?
He said he's unmuted. So the problem, I think, is just that his microphone is not working. So maybe fiddle with the volume buttons on your computer.
Or can you write us in the chat function if it's possible?
Or call in on your cell phone.
Or go out and come back in. Yeah, I don't see. Oh, Georgia Bites, there he is. Yeah, I don't see any audio connected at all, actually, from this end. There's no mic next to Elliot's name at all.
Okay, just come out and come back in.
Can you do that, Elliot? Can you, I'll work on the computer. It is probably, okay. Do we want to give him a second to see if he gets back on? Do we want to ask Hillary to make any comments while we wait for Elliot to get back on?
Yeah, Hillary, do you mind doing that?
Sure. First off, y'all are doing great. I just want to emphasize that it's not a bad policy. It's a really good policy. It just needs to, whenever you talk about a department, any other department that's not me, we just need to bring them to the meeting ASAP to involve them. And that's a lot of like goodwill towards other departments. Performance measures, those need to be coordinated and reviewed with managers, only because we do a lot of tracking already with a lot of different things from different departments. So there's an opportunity to not create more work for someone else and just kind of piggybacking on those existing efforts. And then maybe even potentially, the mayor and commission set their goals and objectives each year, and that's kind of what our performance measures for the managers are based off of. But maybe there's a potential to partner and kind of side with them on using a lot of those existing metrics that can then feed into your complete street metrics. So then you're not creating additional work for anyone else, especially if some of those metrics involve multi-department inputs. But other than that, I mean, y'all are going to do great. And that's about it. I think the performance measures need a lot of talk with the managers. And then anytime you want to impact another department, either not me anymore, but coordinate with Stephen and what section it is in your policy that you really want to keep and coordinate with. And Stephen will be able to set that up with you. And then they can come to this meeting the next time prepared with what you may have questions on. And just, kind of when you reach out, or when Stephen reaches out to those departments, giving him kind of a format that says, like, this is what we're interested in. That was from XYZ in another city. We're interested in implementing something similar here in Athens. How would that work, or why wouldn't it work? We'd like to have that discussion with you. So that's all. That's my last bit of advice for you.
I just to clarify on those performance measures, hopefully I went back and clarified that in what I wrote out, the performance measures, it would be a process that would have to be developed as part of this process, is figuring that out. But Elliot, you want to talk now? Since I'm taking over.
Now, I'm guessing, hopefully.
Hmm?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm still not good at this stuff. I have not had a chance to look as deeply into the policy language as I was hoping to at this point, so my apologies for that. I did sort of early on when some of the edits were going on, I was sort of following things and reading, but didn't really weigh in. I have a little bit of a report back from, so I've been trying to contact the Smart Growth America to see if they could kind of look at some of the policy language, maybe some of the drafts we have, to kind of give their thoughts. And I think it's basically, they operate a lot with like contracts and contracts with different partners like American Heart Association to do local work. And I think Savannah, they're going to do some work in Savannah because the policy there is kind of already moving to the desk of the city council. They call them aldermen there, but they're city council. And so they did a quick, and the person with American Heart we work with, oddly enough, is in Tallahassee because he's not a Southeast person. It's a little confusing, but the policy person. So anyway, he was able to work with National Complete Streets folks, Smart Growth. They did a quick kind of grading of it, and I can send this to you all as long as it's kept internal. I don't want it to leave us 5 or 6, but so the policy that I think I'd shared with you all, it got that Savannah or I sent to Smart Growth. I think it got like an 85, which is a pretty darn good score. So clearly that language, again, according to their sort of policy rubric, is pretty good. And I think a lot of the language we were looking at is sort of similar or share some commonality. So again, I think we're heading in some obviously right direction. But there are some differences in government structure between Savannah and Athens. So like clearly they're not a consolidated government. They don't have a TPW department. They have like a mobility services and engineering department, and then they actually have a planning department, but that the planning department actually does more transportation, so it's a little different than what we have here. So anyway, long story short, I can send that to you all if folks want to look at it. But again, just keep it internal because, and I'll send the notes that the person from National Complete Streets, what they sent with it, just to get a sense of what they're looking at. But I think, yeah, the areas I was thinking mainly about, like, sort of the planning department issues and issues around planning, which is a very different thing here than it is a lot of other places, where most of the complete streets policies that Smart Growth is evaluating, a lot of them are places where MPOs play a pretty big role in sort of this world and kind of the complete streets world. That's not really the case here. Or where planning departments take on a larger, like a county or city planning department takes on a much larger role relative to public right of way. And again, I think Savannah is definitely, that's true. Their core MPO, which is the regional, basically their sort of Savannah surrounding counties, actually does a decent amount relative to these kinds of issues. Ours doesn't, perhaps. And what was one other thing? Well, I'll send that to you all now, and then we can look at it. Take a look at it over the next couple of days.
You guys want me to share the document now?
Sure.
Yeah, I do want to say one thing just to FYI on this, and I can't remember who I've told what at this point. I know I told this to Elliot, but I was accepted as a new commissioner to the Champions Institute, which is the Active People Healthy Nation Champions Institute, co-sponsored by Smart Growth America and the National Complete Streets Coalition with funding from the CDC. Helping making the world of active people healthy nation. But anyway, that is going on. I'm actually starting that tomorrow, and you have to have some project as well in there. But I just, between tomorrow and February 18th, I have 6 sessions, and these are with national leaders. I think they're 2 hours each. And I'm just going to tell you what's in here so you see what I'll expose to. But one is tomorrow, it's define active, friendly routes to everyday destinations. The next one, November, is policy development. The one in December is implementation, design, cost, and funding mechanisms for complete street projects. January, return on investment for complete streets investment, the metric report and communicating the benefits to critical stakeholders. January is case studies, provide and discuss specific examples of complete streets implementation and resulting return on investment. And the last one is communicating the value of complete streets implementation and the art of coalition building. And again, there's like a project, and I think some of them, they expect the project to be refining, developing the complete streets policy, and I'll understand that more. So we do have, these are the leaders in this complete streets smart growth stuff who I'll be working with. And then also everyone else. There are 3 people from Georgia on this one, someone from a council person equivalent from Savannah and some other smaller town. And then there are people like a mayor from, I don't have the list, but, they're big and small places, and a couple of mayors and a bunch of people who are the similar level as I am. So it should be an interesting, real interesting experience on that. So let me share the screen here. Where are we? Share screen. So are you seeing this all in here or there? Okay. And I don't know, Aaron, have you had a chance to read this closely? Yes? Elliot, no.
Hold on. Yeah, yes, I looked over it. I haven't made a whole lot of comments or at all comments because I wanted to talk first before everybody was making comments. So I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah. I have gone through them, and Teresa, I want you to hop in there, and Hillary, because I did, Elliot and Lauren and Aaron, I'd love it if you went through here and then commented afterwards on this, or any places with changes in wording. I think one of the things was that Hillary brought up is, and which I would change here, the complete streets policy directs all ACC-UG departments to address all these varied transportation. And we can just have the ACC Department of, and I changed this in other places, transportation and public works. And I think that's a basic thing in here that I did change in a bunch of other places. And I just want to clarify with us all what we're doing there. So it would be.
So with that, I know I'm trying to parse out what this means. So the problem before with complete streets was it couldn't be even considered unless it was reconstruction or new construction. And with this now, can it be considered for any type of maintenance, at least considered for complete streets? Or is it only still reconstruction and new construction?
Well, the sentence I have here, it says this policy applies to new construction,
Right.
reconstruction, retrofits, maintenance, and Hillary did respond to that, and operation of the transportation network with some exemptions to be described later in the policy. And that, I don't know what Hillary says here. Maintenance includes a lot of types of maintenance for different departments: sidewalk repair, patch, seal of road work, and other small fixes. And I think my reading over this later on was, and Hillary rightly says, as each of these instances needed to seek approval, it would be greatly increase the timeline for something the city once did relatively quickly.
Right.
And I think that I evolved the exemption language some to address some of those smaller things that you really don't want to, that don't need to be involved in this and don't have to go through an exemption process.
Can I
Right.
ask a question?
Yeah.
Sorry. What maintenance do you think would trigger a full street rebuild that isn't repavement? Like, when you're talking about maintenance, I think part of it is I have an idea from a public works perspective of what maintenance is. And I think I don't understand from your perspective, what maintenance is happening that could build a complete street.
And
I didn't think maintenance was really a word we wanted to put in there. I think repaving is a word we want to put in
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
Not maintenance.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
this is probably something that I took from someone else. So,
The problem is that other places a lot of it depends on the agency and the level of government, state versus local. People will use maintenance, like GDOT will use repavement. Maintenance may include repavement as a term for them. So like that's where it gets kind of, because routine maintenance includes repaving roadways, for instance, for GDOT to a certain extent. So
Okay.
I've heard that lexicon in their world. So I think that's
Yeah.
a little confusing sometimes.
and that's exactly why we need to go through this like this.
Yes. And that's something that Tyler talked about before, was such a problem, was that repaving did not, qualify for complete streets. And from what I remember him saying, and that was a big problem because that it should be. So
Well, specifically and this was a little bit before Hillary's time, but I'll give credit to Lauren and other folks on the T-SPLOST committee for pushing Blaine to make sure, and I think this was in Athens in Motion sort of as well, to make sure that any T-SPLOST money that was used for repaving, that this would kind of be in there as a clause. Like we would look at roads that were the T-SPLOST money for repaving, that 5-year window, and that now it's in policy, and Hillary has been doing it, which is that any roadway 24 feet or wider, they'll look at for bike lanes and things like that. But this is sort of trying to codify, if that's the right word, that thing that we were asking for in T-SPLOST and sort of in Athens in Motion in that process.
Yeah, right.
So some of these things are things that may be being done, but aren't written down in places. There's other places in the document where we don't have this written down, and if there was someone different in there, it could be interpreted differently. Okay, so I would assume, back though this changed to the Department of Transportation, I have kind of limited it to that. At one place, I do say, and we can come back to that later, to encourage, what is it? What's the other thing? Planning to, encourage this among developers, but we can come back to that later. So I think this is, and I think this is something I did add here. Athens Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan, Athens in Motion creates such a network and uses a complete streets approach. This policy, however, addresses not only Athens in Motion network of projects, but applies to all transportation projects in Athens. Because I think that one of the things is that all of these policies don't like connect together. So I wanted to have that mention of Athens in Motion in there.
Carol,
Yeah.
can you make the screen bigger? Can you
Yes.
put it on full screen? Thank you.
Just
So Teresa, you can also, to the left, there's a zoom in button on your screen that you can click on as well and zoom in as much as you want.
How about I just do this? No. Oh, this button? No, I don't want to add on. I'll just do it the way I know how to do it. Okay, how's that? No, what happened to this? Yeah. So this was the introductory part. And again, we can tweak this more. The benefits, a lot of this stuff is stuff we had from before again. And what I set up above was I highlighted stuff in yellow that was in the original plan or policy that we've been working with. But then after a while, like some of the stuff that you all worked on, I just didn't go back and find everything. So these were the benefits. I just added on. I'm inviting. Yes, I probably added on wording from the Complete Streets Coalition, and she said, "How about inviting? I like inviting too. Let's go with inviting." And get rid of the spurring for the time being. Okay. So I think that that's pretty straightforward. Policy objectives. So I think Teresa has some other wording here that she liked, which might be much better for the last one, but that's a wording question, right, Teresa? The comment over here?
Yes, it's just a suggested interpretation might be more clear, but you know, it's all open for discussion as far as I'm concerned.
So we could do that. Do you guys have feeling about this?
I think I appreciate Teresa's suggestion, but I like the original one better. That it the activity is on addressing issues of equity as opposed to prioritize active transportation. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah. The main verb and subject is. It changes it around. Yeah.
I get issues of equity. I understand like that phrase may not be very clear. It seems a little wishy-washy. I don't know.
We could just take that word out. Like, how about that?
And so address inequity?
That's good. Another point is I'm a little, I don't know what the right way to say this is, but I'm not fond of saying admitting past mistakes. I mean, yeah, we've, as a society, we've made many mistakes and we're paying the price for it. Yes. But I don't know if it's the kind of thing that we want to put in a policy statement.
Maybe something more forward looking.
Yes. Like, we can't fix the past, but we can build a better future.
I kind of like publicly acknowledging past mistakes.
Today, with the way that we're pondering racial inequity and violence, it's becoming really critical for communities to acknowledge what has gone on. I hear y'all that it's hard to fit this in policy in the right way, and admitting past mistakes is kind of vague.
Well, you could use your word acknowledging.
Would this be a good one to highlight and maybe help Crystal from the inclusion office to kind of try to help guide that conversation and wording?
That's a good idea.
It's a great idea. Thank you.
Let's move this over.
And I think one of the things that's a little difficult, and I'll just, sorry, I had some tech problems on my end, which is that my sense of, and again, this is not like Athens in general, but I think in the transportation sort of like agencies, like local governments may have been a part of a interstate project that bulldozed a black neighborhood, right? But a lot of times the state agency isn't going to claim ownership of it, but the local government doesn't want to be held responsible, whether it's legally or otherwise. And so it's like a weird sort of push and pull where local governments, like Broad Street used to be 2 lanes each way, GDOT widened it to 4, right? That creates a problem for that community. Where was Athens? What was Athens's role in that versus GDOT's role? So I think I'm just saying, I think it's a good thing to bring in someone in Athens-Clarke County government to help kind of navigate some of those paths. If we're gonna start diving into like the racial and equity reasons as to why our roadways and our infrastructure looks like it does, because it gets there are issues which are more complicated relative to jurisdiction, if that makes any sense.
All right, so we're going to put a note here that says, comment. Talk with Office of Inclusion. Okay, so here's the equity part, which goes on wild, doesn't it? Which is probably what, this is what Lauren had. And I think basically, Lauren, I might have changed some wording in here, but basically I think I just took what was in here, what you had, and put it into numbers. So shall we, and the question here is, do we want all of this? Is it too much? I'm just going to read it out loud because I think we need to digest the whole thing. Equity. A complete streets design approach creates a more equitable transportation system by providing affordable, convenient, and accessible modes of transportation for all people, including vulnerable populations. Historically, streets have been designed to emphasize mobility and efficiency, primarily for cars, making it challenging for people to walk, bike, or take public transit for transportation or recreation. Vulnerable populations, including people of low income, minorities, the elderly, children, and people with disabilities, are often disproportionately affected by incomplete and unsafe streets. Low-income people may not be able to afford to drive, while children, elderly, and disabled people may not be physically able to drive. And that, I think there's a sentence that you could possibly get rid of. In car-dependent communities, non-drivers often have less mobility, resulting in reduced economic or social opportunities. This reduced mobility affects vulnerable populations who do not drive or have a car by influencing what a job a person could take, where they can live, transportation costs, time spent commuting, and access to educational opportunities. Equity in complete streets is not a means to an end, but a continual effort and approach in selection and application of projects.
I thought that could be omitted just because it seems redundant. Number 4.
This 4.
I like this statement.
I do too, but we got to cut something, right?
Well, maybe in number 3, we don't reduce mobility affects vulnerable populations. Maybe it's enough to say, in car-dependent communities, non-drivers often have less mobility, resulting in reduced economic.
Yeah, because that second, this just clarifies that first second.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
2 and 3 kind of can be, in some ways, it's almost like 2 and 3 can be combined, and honestly,
Yeah.
maybe 1 and 4. I mean, I think if you want to make the point about, yeah, I mean, maybe not 1. It's almost like 1, 2, and 3 could be combined in a sense. I guess we don't want to have huge paragraphs, but
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we come back to number 4 before we pick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Equity requires routine investment in underserved neighborhoods and additional funds to remedy past deficits in transportation funding. Funds specifically designated to neighborhoods and streets should not be a cause to remove those areas from general T-SPLOST or SPLOST buckets or other monies for general purposes. ACCUG General Fund, G. Grants, federal funding. And then the thing is, I had a little bit of problems with understanding that.
Of understanding the reason behind that?
No, I think actually we want to take this. It's to specific neighborhoods, isn't it?
I don't fully understand it either, and
It's that funds designated to specific neighborhoods and streets should not be a cause to remove those areas from general T-SPLOST buckets. Is that it?
does that mean if they've had money allocated before that they should not be?
Okay. Y'all can help me come up with a sentence here.
I suggested something, and it's in the sidebar, which you can't really see right at the moment. It's
Yeah.
Let me see if that. Wait, which one is that?
I think it's above that. How about something like this? Historically underserved neighborhoods may require supplemental funding for underlying infrastructure to achieve equity in transportation investment. Therefore, projects in these areas may draw from any of a number of funding sources. I mean, is that what we're trying to say?
I guess in green, I don't understand the what exactly does it mean with funds designated to specific neighborhoods and streets?
So here's what I want to avoid is if there is a bucket of money that's designated for an underserved area to address inequity, that doesn't mean that all those regular projects that were on a list for, sidewalks or repaving or something like that those projects get removed from the general and now they've got to come out of their special bucket. The special bucket is designed to provide additional funding,
right? Special
not
purpose.
To waste the regular funding. It's supposed to help address inequities. So how do we say that?
So the one comment I have for this one is I think it's fine to encourage that, but a policy can't dictate to an elected body how to use funds or break up funds. And so that was my only concern with the current wording, and I don't think that was the intent, but that's how it could have been interpreted. And so I would just try to be careful of using words like encouraged when you're talking about future elected bodies and how to break up that funding versus directing them to choose how to use that fund, if that makes sense.
Yes, makes sense to me. So it's really, I mean, Hillary, I think we have two things. One is that, Hillary, you're talking about the should not is too strong because we can't tell them what to do or not to do. And then our other question is, what does this actually mean? Does this mean that, does this mean that, I think this is what you mean, Lauren, is that if we have a sidewalk fund and we have a West Broad Street fund, just because we have a West Broad Street fund doesn't mean we should take a project out of the tier 1 funding that could be considered for the general bucket fund. especially because there's a whole lot more to do in the West Broad area than just that sidewalk. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And Lauren and I both know this was a big issue with T-Splost.
Mhm.
Huge, and it's something we really pushed against. But I do worry in this incomplete streets that we're getting a little bit of like creep away from what we're, our more specific
Yeah, I think,
initiatives here.
I mean, I think actually the first sentence includes that intent. You know, that intent is there in the first sentence.
Maybe the first sentence is all we need to say.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Would it be enough, Lauren, to just say,
Yeah, equity requires routine investment, underserved areas, and additional funds to remedy past transportation.
yeah,
Yeah, so that covers it. It's both the routine, consistent routine investment and additional funds.
Right.
Yeah.
because
I think that's good.
I think I can understand what you're talking about because my like super knowledge is splost,
Yeah.
but I don't think it might make sense to everyone else.
Yeah.
Less or
Yeah, I
But
just
think those second points that the sort of the explanation points that Lauren is making, I think that is crucial for particularly like the next commission to understand. So maybe
Mhm.
star that as something to talk about with your colleagues, Carol, because I feel like some of them may not get that.
Okay. Oh, star it in my head or like star it here. Yeah.
Starred there / starred when you're going through this Champions Institute and you're going to be learning about how to talk about this with other commissioners.
Okay.
Like I feel like, because I think the and I don't want to make this into a bigger thing because whatever, but the sort of geographic equity relative to everybody gets a project and no district is allowed to get more projects than anyone else, because this is exactly what Lauren's talking about relative to
Right.
commissioners saying, I'm not getting what my district deserves, so I want to pile on or take something out of this pot to move it to me. And so I think that's and Lauren was getting very specific about the way that could be done in Athens, or maybe was tried to be done in Athens. But I think anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Right. Which is, I mean, I wonder if that, yeah.
But I think it's good not to necessarily include all that.
do we need to be more specific about underserved neighborhoods? Or do we mean areas that have less transportation infrastructure, or do we mean how do we be a little more clear? Be more clear.
I think it should be more socioeconomic and some certain neighborhoods don't have transportation infrastructure by choice. They don't want sidewalks because we know that there's racial issues behind that. Wealthier neighborhoods that don't want that. We've seen that on Westlake. So I guess we should be careful to make sure that it is not just based on areas that self-select not to have transportation infrastructure. Do you know what I mean?
Well, is this what we need here? Because I mean, I'm just tying this together with what we already wrote in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this is also an area where I think, I don't know how the county, this would be a good place to touch base again with the DIE office relative to how the county currently defines like underserved neighborhoods or vulnerable populations within their own metrics. And again, I will say, I think one of the critiques that folks have made about Athens in Motion is like maybe not calling out race specifically and sort of falling back on the proxy of socioeconomic. So but I honestly think it's a big jump to include race in this if the DIE office is not doing that, right? So I think it's worth maybe having that as another sort of star point to talk to.
Yeah. Thanks, Elliot, because I wanted to mention that, but I also know that it can be really charged, but it's a huge, I think we do need to see how we can best build that in.
Yeah. And again,
I completely agree.
And maybe there's a way in the document we can, I mean, again, it's tough to go by census tract. It's tough to go by, anything like that. But I think there's a way to have a 2-sentence acknowledgement maybe at the beginning about how you define underserved neighborhoods and vulnerable populations in Athens, and that could be by a number of things. But I think the DEI, the Office of Inclusion would probably be good to talk to you about that.
Can we reference in that that statement you were just recommending we put in, Elliot? Can we reference the criteria of Athens in Motion for prioritizing projects?
I have that in the next point.
Okay.
But I mean, we do have up here, like, I mean, I guess what we're looking at is, up in 7 above where we said we had the discussion of race, and we mentioned race there, and really, and what we have here is number 2, a description of vulnerable populations here. If you can see that says minorities but doesn't say race. So I think that whole question of being consistent here is probably a good one to know what we're committing to.
Yeah, I just want the language to line up with other documents with that commissioners are looking at, so that they don't automatically see inconsistencies and start pulling it apart.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I will say would be really important, because there's multiple departments going through different things right now, and equity is obviously being enveloped in all of them. And what you don't want are 5 documents defining equity differently. And so that's why I think all of that probably needs to be highlighted, and then almost put on hold / not hold, but kind of pushing that conversation with the commissioners and the equity office to create finite definitions of what they want for this equity in Athens.
This came up before in our initial draft of equity, is trying to figure out what equity means and what we're talking about and getting consistent with that. So I hope that we'll get some clarity on that soon.
Well, I will say that from having participated in the commission retreat with the Department of Inclusion, the Office of Inclusion, Crystal, what came out of it, like about an hour and a half discussion, was just, and I think this approach she uses is just having everyone talk about their definitions of equity. So it seemed very, it seemed like part of a long process. Let me put it that way. So we'll see.
Carol, are they still doing an equity committee or something, like one of those? I remember them talking about a citizen-led equity committee, but I wasn't sure if that was actually happening.
I think there was some communicated tension along that subject, that it hadn't happened already from several commissioners. So I'm not sure.
Okay, because that could also be an opportunity to kind of have a citizen committee define equity for, for everybody, and it not have to be a public works definition.
Yeah.
So it's 5:55. We still have 5 other sections to talk about, and I think we really need to have a discussion about how we'll continue work from here, since this is Hillary's last policy meeting with us. And we can't, as I understand it, it's going to meet beyond a regular Athens in Motion meeting. So I'm trying to figure out what we can do to keep this going forward, because there's still a lot to talk about. There's a lot of great work happening, but there's still a lot to talk about.
Yeah, unfortunately, I got to sign off at 6. Sorry.
Yeah.
For your future meeting, Stephen can coordinate it, and he, I think, is just as capable as me as providing feedback. And I also think you're getting to a point where you could continue to work on this offline, and then probably your next meeting either have inclusion, or if there's sections related to planning, and bring them into the conversation. But you'll have to pick a couple of dates through email and then coordinate with Stephen on meeting with you guys.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. And there is, I'd like it if you guys all like went through here. And I know there's a lot of comments. Maybe I could go through and resolve a couple that have been resolved. So there'd be fewer comments. But one of the things I had to do in here was, well, what I didn't have to do, but what I did was, there's supposed to be an accountability, or there's another word, but there were often a citizen group doing certain things. And I was like, oh, why make there's so many citizen groups and commissions in existing now that it seemed like this would go in line with Athens in Motion. And so and this is not a done deal by any means, because we have to work with the manager and Department of Transportation. But I would like you all to sort of like consider, just reflect on that as I incorporated that in here, about the role of Athens in Motion in approving, reviewing, whatever the word would be. And then it would obviously, again, need to be something that would then go on and be talked about with, with the head of Department of Transportation and Blaine and others. And I will say, I think I said this to someone else, but I will say that one thing I learned from my training here is that Blaine is not only the manager, like each of the other assistant managers they all have 10 departments and 10 departments. And then Blaine has 7 departments. So the assistant managers are not working with Department of Transportation Public Works. That's Blaine working with them. So one of the reasons why we would be talking to Blaine right away is simply that he's the quote unquote assistant manager over this. I know he's not assistant manager, but none of the other assistant managers work with the Department of Transportation and Public Works. So I just wanted to clarify that because I hadn't been aware of that.
Thank you,
He's
Carol.
my boss.
He's your boss, right.
Before Aaron goes offline, can I throw out some meeting times for us to suggest to Stephen while we're all together? So I'm going to suggest Wednesday, November 11th, or Wednesday, November 18th as a backup, 5 p.m. Would that work for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
One sec.
Okay.
With Stephen's schedule, he has to attend every mayor and commission meeting that involves anything with public works. So he's at every work session, every agenda setting. He's also in legislative review committee. So I'd give him 3 to 5 options if it's an evening meeting, just because he's assistant director, so he attends a lot of meetings.
Okay.
Gotta run, y'all, but
Okay.
thanks, and I'll get some comments on there this weekend too. Thanks, y'all.
Okay. Bye, Aaron.
Bye, Aaron.
Bye-bye.
Stop sharing this screen.
All right, I'll figure out some additional times and I will run them by everyone, including Aaron, before we pitch them to Stephen. And I'll look at the Mayor and Commission calendar just to see as much as I can if I can suggest times that he's definitely not going to be able to do it.
Okay. Hey, Hillary, can I ask you a quick question?
Of course.
I want to throw together an agenda for our meeting next week, your last one.
Yeah.
Are we discussing Riverbend?
As of right now, yes, but that might change Friday. We're waiting on some final things from the consultant. So everything's ready other than what we're waiting on. But I'll let you know by Friday.
Okay, and I might put it on there and we could just remove it because I'm going to go away there. But and do you have anything else big?
No, I mean, it's because this is my last one. I'm just doing Riverbend essentially because that's basically the only thing on my plate currently.
Okay.
And then we can talk about what the transition and how quickly they're going to get my replacement, hopefully.
Okay, I'll put that on the agenda, transition. And then I'm just going to give each of our committees a chance. So we'll have maybe a little bit more time for commission people to talk. So Lauren, you'll talk about the complete streets policy. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, heads up.
finished.
I'm not seeing with the 11th or 18th right now. I see the hearings board and stuff like that in historic preservation. So I might just go ahead and pitch those 2 times to Stephen. And, you know, if he says nope or something comes up, then do something else.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, guys.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate
Bye,
it.
everybody.
Thank you for all your hard work, y'all.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.